Hello, we are here today with JD Graffam of Simple Focus, Clear Function, Sifter, Pulse, Ballpark, Temper, Client Flow, Project List, and sure to be many more in the near future. Thanks for coming, JD. I guess,
Hey,
can you give a quick overview of how on earth you got to be the serial SaaS acquirer and running two agencies and try not to get too lengthy, but help people understand where you're coming from on this?
sure. Well, I guess the first acquisition I ever completed was I'd been running Simple Focus for 4 or 5 years, and I looked at a product company called Pulse as a small business that some friends of mine were looking to get rid of, and it was a very profitable, healthy little business, even though they hadn't really been putting much energy into it. And I didn't know much about SaaS at the time. I didn't know what SaaS metrics were. I didn't know the word churn. I didn't know anything about SaaS businesses, um, which kind of freed me up to look at it as a business. And I think that's sort of the lucky ignorance that I had at that time. And so I looked at it and I said, well, okay, this business has been running on autopilot for 3 years and it's been flat. It hasn't been shrinking. It's been getting 10 customers every month and losing 10 customers every month. And the guys that were running it weren't really putting much time or energy into it. And I thought, looking back at this business's performance and the fact that there was zero in advertising and it was just kind of selling itself through organic SEO, I was like, it would take a lot of work for me to go screw that up. So it seems like a pretty good investment. So I did it, actually put a little TLC into it, grew the business, learned all about what SaaS was, and um, since then I basically have done that over and over again,
Right on, including with Sifter.
including with Sifter. Yeah, except if I'm being completely honest, Sifter is probably completely it's a completely different situation than Pulse, where Pulse was kind of on autopilot and a couple ticks short of being neglected. Sifter, I learned, was actually a completely different beast in that you had been this you had been running Sifter for 8 years full time and had your heart and souls poured into it, and there was not as much low hanging fruit to improving Sifter. Customer support's always been fantastic. The code base is in great shape. The functionality is all built out, and it was just a well taken care of business. And it was a completely different type of deal than Pulse, but at the same time, it sort of falls into that category of SaaS where it would be hard to sort of uh, run it off the tracks, so to
Yep.
speak, because with recurring revenue and metrics that you can look back on over time, it would, and you got, like 600, 900, 1,200 customers on a product who don't know each other. It would be really hard for you to make them all upset at once and have the business just kind of crash and burn into the ground. Whereas some agency friends of mine who run agencies is a completely different type of business, and I love it. But an agency has a lot less distributed risk. Some agencies with a staff of 20 or 30 people have 5 clients, and if you have a bad couple of months where 2 or 3 clients decide that they don't need you anymore, even if it's no fault of your own, it just wasn't good timing for them to be spending $30,000 a month hiring you out for marketing websites, then your business is in trouble really quick. And so to shore up that risk, I looked to these SaaS businesses as ways to sort of stabilize the cash flow for my family of companies, and that's pretty much how I got here. Just kind of using common sense.
How does that? How does the juggling of not only different businesses but also different sets of different types of businesses play out? Like, how are you able to stay on top of that without going crazy? Um,
Well, so you're assuming that I don't go crazy, which may not be fair, but uh, before I answer that question, one of the things I will say is that there are, I think, two kinds of people in the world. There's the kind of person who really wants to focus on a thing and give it his or her full attention, so they can maximize the investment of time and even resources. And I've got nothing against that, but that's not me. Um, that sounds really boring to me. And I'm not saying that it should sound boring to anybody that's watching this. I'm just saying that there are different types of people in the world, and you need to figure out which kind you are. Don't let people tell you that you need to focus on one thing if that just doesn't come naturally to you. And what I've learned about myself is what comes naturally to me is delegating to a team of really smart people, and swooping in and providing some high level guidance and direction and vision casting type stuff. And that's where I fit. And so what I'm able to do is paint a picture and a vision for the direction I want the business to go as a whole, and then I can focus on each individual product and give it some attention, and then I'll bounce to another product, and then I'll dive into that, and then I'll bounce to another product, and I'll dive into that, and then I'll switch back to the agency when one of the agencies needs my attention. And that's the interesting thing, though, is that it's not so much that I'm switching from being um, uh, a SaaS operator to an agency operator. Um, the way the SaaS businesses are structured is that the Simple Focus or Clear Function, they don't own the apps. They're separate LLCs, and so when Ballpark or Sifter needs work done, Ballpark hires Clear Function or Simple Focus. What that means is that I'm actually able to be the client, and so the agents, and I get the agency treatment from Simple Focus or Clear Function, and they treat me like a client, and the apps pay the agencies for their work, and so I'm able to, you know, switch between them kind of in that way. But one of the things that um, one of the things that I hear a lot is agency owners kind of want to get into product business because clients are obnoxious and they don't get it, man, stuff like that. But the truth is, like, I absolutely love doing sales and relationship building and running the agency business. It is fantastic. And I love running product businesses. I just love them both. I love everything, you know? So it's not really challenging or difficult for me. I do have some time constraints, and I think that having a capable team and being able to delegate is a big part of what makes that something that we can be successful at.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said too for just being able to switch gears, because Sifter was the first time for me in a long time, or really ever, that I've been focused on one project, because all I did before that was consulting. And
Hmm.
at the same time, there's times where it can be exhausting focusing on one thing that long, and it's nice to have something to switch gears to. And in the case of running a single app, you can switch from marketing to design to development,
Hmm.
but you still aren't getting away from that one core problem, which for some people is great because it gives you that one thing to just chew on and tear up and really go at it. Yeah, there's definitely situations where it feels like it gets exhausting. It's like, I want something fresh to think about, something to kind of
Yeah.
get perspective, because you can really get in a rut creatively if you aren't kind of fiddling around and trying different things in other spaces. So,
So, well, running a bunch of different products and a couple of agencies for me sometimes does feel like the same old, right? I mean, I'm switching brands.
yeah.
I'm taking this hat off and I'm putting this hat on, and so I do get in those ruts. And one of the things that I found a lot of reward in lately is I've been writing more again. I was always a writer, and then I wasn't able to write for a long time. And exercising that muscle surely helps reinvigorate me creatively. I also like doing projects around the house. Those help me get over the creative ruts too. I mean, sometimes just getting out from in front of the computer and away from work is what it takes.
Yeah. So, looking at SaaS apps as a buyer, somebody who's seen a lot of SaaS apps, reviewed them, and as product people, it's easier to focus on the code, the actual interface, and that kind of thing. But as a buyer who's theoretically buying strategically and with healthy finances in mind, what are kind of the red flags to you, or the things that are, oh, this is going to be a great business. There's a lot of opportunity for me to help improve it, grow it.
Sure.
What are you looking for out there?
Um, well, I'll start with the red flags. The red flags for me as a buyer aren't necessarily the same red flags that every buyer is going to have. But for
Yeah.
me personally, one of the red flags I watch for is someone who's uh, trying to get out of the business for the wrong reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, one of those reasons is just they want to cash out and start something new and different, and they never really finished what they started.
Yeah.
Um, because maybe they just felt like they it was going to be take too long to finish what they started. And they want to give it to somebody else to do that. Instead, what I look for are people who are getting out for the right reasons, and the right reasons are, in your case, this is a really good reason. You wanted to kind of focus on some health issues and refocus on your family and sort of make a change to your personal lifestyle. And I think that's a really admirable reason to make a difficult decision of selling a stable business that's done a lot for you and your family. And it wasn't an easy decision for you, and it shouldn't have been. It can't be if it's the right reason.
Hmm.
I mean, it's maybe a simple decision, but not an easy decision.
Oh, yeah. It took
You know,
about
I
two
think,
years to
yeah,
really finally make the decision and pull the trigger.
exactly. And frankly, that's what's happened over and over again. Pulse was not an easy decision for the guys. It was kind of frustrating for them to let go of a business that was bringing in good profit with minimal effort. But at the end of the day, one of the guys had a professional opportunity to, pursue his career as a sort of development director and get a good fat salary and focus on that for a while. And he was moving anyway. And then the other guy was like going into the ministry full time. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, we were running one or two or two or three products, and one really just commanded all of our attention, and we needed to focus on that. So
Hmm.
we kind of wanted to get rid of all distractions, and then when they really care about when a seller really cares about what happens to the product after they're done with it, that's a good indication that they've actually put some TLC into it. That's a good indication that you're not buying a piece of junk,
Yeah.
right? If they're just selling it to the highest bidder, then it kind of tells you possibly a lot about their motivations, not just for when they're selling it, but when they're running it as a business. And that means that you're going to inherit some headaches with the way that they built it, because they didn't necessarily build it to be sustainable. They built it to accomplish something a little bit different. Yeah, I mean, those are some things. As far as getting a little bit more tactical, though, there's an interesting thing that happens when buyers place a value on a software product. They place a premium on growth,
Hmm.
and they like to see that sharp growth. And boy, that's not something I'm interested in right now, as much as stability, because I'm coming at this from someone who isn't, how do you say, loaded out the wazoo. I've been really successful in business and been very fortunate, but I can't just buy apps indiscriminately and lose my investment.
Hmm.
So what I do is I look for apps that have grown and grown and plateaued and then grown a little bit and plateaued, and that have proven that they have a market fit. They have sort of found their natural size, that it's easy for them to be at,
Hmm.
and that tells me a lot about what the performance of the investment, if you will, is going to be. And I'm taking it from a much more conservative perspective when I value a business. So I actually value stable, secure business higher than I would a growing business, because the growth is risky. You
Yeah.
try and you
You pay
try
a
and
you pay a premium for that growth, and if the growth stops, that premium you paid wasn't worth it.
exactly, and that's the thing. Is like I'd rather pay something that I know what the payback is going to look like.
Yeah.
frankly, I'm more interested in that. It's not that I disagree that the premium on growth is right. It's just that that's not what I'm looking for, and it's kind of a yellow flag if something's growing. It's like, well, they probably want too much for it, or if they don't, I don't know exactly what I'm getting myself into. Um, I, I look for people who have a voice in the industry, who have shared what they've learned, who have built up a lot of goodwill and a reputation in the industry. Um, Frankly, your reputation when I buy a business from you matters a great deal, because it makes the transaction and the contract simpler. Um, the the best way to put it is, if you've got, like, for example, you, Garrett, if you've got a good reputation in the industry, then it would not be in your best interest to pull one over on me,
Mm-hmm.
because that would undermine, what you've been building over the years. And so you've got a lot more incentive to be upfront about any problems and known issues. And it lets me take a little bit of risk that other buyers may not take, and I can actually close a deal faster and make it simpler, because I literally am doing a lot of it on trust.
Yeah.
All the little CYA details I'm not so worried about. If I'm working with someone who comes through a referral, who's got a heart of gold, who's got a good reputation that they want to protect in the industry, and I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not perfect, make mistakes every day, but am really focused on making sure that I'm somebody that, when I interact with somebody new, they know what they're going to get.
Well, and too, now that it's all said and done, it's very easy to say that it was a pretty unflinching. I mean, because you and I basically sorted out the details over text message with Sifter,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I was like, I was okay. That's less than I wanted, but I feel good about him. I feel good about it going to him. I had made a few phone calls and checked around to some mutual friends, and they all said good things. I was like, all right, this is a discount from the previous offer, but I'm comfortable with it. Went forward with it, and in hindsight, after the deal was done, how much simpler it was to do. Uh, every little detail is like, I did not have 1 ounce of regret, even though we took a bit of a hit in the revenue, or the value of the business. And the ease of closing the deal, and the fact that you and I trusted each other and weren't screwing around and trying to insert every little, clause into the deal, I think made a world of difference. Because definitely the first deal, the one for us that we ended up having to walk away from on closing day, the reason we walked away was because so many of those things kept happening and there wasn't
Mhm.
trust. And it got to the point where it was like, look, we've done enough. It was kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back. So it was definitely a much better experience. And I think there was benefit to both sides. Would have loved a higher price, but it was all, in the end, it was all good.
Well, so I will say this about your character personally, and just your whole approach to this. Um, and I want the people who are listening to this to hear this about you. Um, there is a pretty standard thing in the accounting world, that you brought to our attention after the deal was closed, basically, where you, on your own, without any prompting from us, went through and ran a query of the annual.
It was monthly because we didn't have annual, but yeah,
Sorry, yeah, you
yeah.
ran through the monthly subscriptions, and you said, all right, so you, as the new owner, have to service customers who have paid in advance of the coming month,
Mm-hmm.
which means that in the accounting world, and purely, like, for accuracy and being really clean bookkeeping sake, which meant you actually sent us a check uh, for the accounts that we'd have to service over the rest of the month for money that you had collected because of the closing date.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really classy thing to do. And of course, we accepted it. I had with my
Wasn't
hand
so
out.
classy. You were
It's
going to
just
say no.
Yeah, no, it was a super classy thing, but I wasn't going to say no anyway. It's one of those things that shows Garrett that you you thought about Sifter as a business and you understand business. Um, but more than that, you were really concerned with making sure that I felt good about the deal, that the customers were going to be taken care of, that everything was above board 100%. And I think that's like that's been an inspiration to me, like looking at how you handled your business and how you handled that transaction. It's certainly been something I look up to you for that. And not just that, but the whole deal, the way you handled everything.
Yeah, well, and I feel like out of it, the fact that every time you and I've been in the same city, we can meet up for beers. Like I can't imagine there's a lot of times, and I'm sure they exist, but there's not a lot of transactions where people buy a business and then they still want to meet up for have some drinks and talk over and all that kind of
I
stuff. So
I always want
for
to do
you,
it.
that maybe I wouldn't have expected that. So it's definitely there's a lot of value in that, I think,
Yeah.
and it's something to for anybody looking to sell their business to really consider because there's
Hmm.
if you get somebody who's just too business oriented and there's not kind of some inherent trust, it's at least to me now doubly so would raise some red flags about whether it's the right move and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. I don't see, yeah, I don't see any reason to not want to have a relationship with someone that you've bought or sold a business to or from. Um, but it depends on the individuals. Maybe
yeah,
I'll buy a business one day from somebody that I don't really respect. But right now, I've got enough businesses that I'm buying and running that I can be really selective. And so, one of the boxes I want to check off is this a good person? Is this
yeah.
somebody that I want to have a relationship with? Because heck, you're still in the Slack channel or you're still in the
I
Slack
keep
account.
wondering when y'all are going to kick me out.
I don't want to kick you out because that's the way that I get to chat with you,
Hmm.
like one to one with private conversations. And I think it's so funny that I just picture your like Apple Watch vibrating or something when you're in a meeting. It says, here's the code deployed to Sifter, and you pull out your phone real quick, and you're like, oh guys, you forgot about the such and so.
It's not quite
uh,
that bad, but I want to make sure that everybody's good on some of those new
no,
features and all that kind of stuff.
no, it's been a blast having you chime in every now and then. It really feels in a lot of ways like like you're still part of the family. I feel bad some days that because it's not typical. You're the only person I've ever bought a business from who lasts more than 30 days in communication with
Is
us,
it
and
ready
it's
to
just
check out?
well, it's just because we don't mind and you don't mind. It doesn't seem.
Yeah.
But as soon as you're ready to turn off the notifications, I mean, you certainly can. But I'd love to be able to chat with you. We have to
I
figure out.
scale it back. I've been a
Yeah,
little less responsive and some of
yeah.
that because I don't want to be too not too much helicopter parenting in there. But
Yeah, well, I don't want to kick you out because I want you to decide when you're ready, Garrett. I feel like maybe we should send you a check,
oh,
like your old staff or something. But
oh
in
man,
in all seriousness, one of the things that I like about the deals that I've done is that the founders are typically like unable to give it the focus anymore, and
hmm,
so we do make it easy for them to like hand it over to us, check out because we've got a really competent team, and I'm buying products that have a similar the back office stuff, with regards to the hosting or the technology,
hmm,
and trying to trying to get everything on Postmark, just because I love Postmark and I love you guys and the Wild Bit team. Trying to get everything onto less, more and more similar stacks,
yeah, a
which
lot of
which
benefit
makes
to
it.
that.
Yeah, well, for me, there's a lot of benefit in being able to take over apps easier and get the original founders moved on to the next thing in their careers,
Yeah,
so that they're not feeling like they've got to hang around too much. I mean, with you, it's been fun, but it's certainly been the exception. Having someone as engaged as you seem to, um, you know, be like being.
yeah, for sure. So not to talk too much about the Sifter deal. and ideally cover some more ground. One of the other things I really wanted to touch on, and I know that you've seen this, you've experienced it, you've been on the far side of it, is a lot of the fear, and I had this fear just dominated my mind through all my health issues, was that if you neglect a SaaS app and you're not updating it and releasing new features, that it's going to just shrivel up and die overnight. And I know that's not the case now. I still have a hard time believing it, but it's the truth. Can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences with that, either on specific apps or just in general across the apps?
Sure, yeah. I will tell you that the first several products that I bought, I would um, I would get email notifications on every support ticket, and well, let me start by clarifying this for anybody who's listening who doesn't necessarily know this. I have, the staff of Simple Focus and Clear Function running the day today of the apps. I do engage with them, but I am more of a business owner than I am the operator personally of the apps. So what that means is we've got, a guy that handles, or a couple of different guys that handle email support, right? So I would subscribe to email notifications and have the Twitter account on my phone, and I would have daily, I would log into Baremetrics 10 times a day, and I would get daily, bank balances, and I was just constantly looking at all the different metrics. And it was really overwhelming as I went from two to three to four to five to six products, and um, and I was constantly checking those metrics because it was fun, but also because I was worried that something might happen, especially when you
Yeah.
take over a new app, and as happened today with Client Flow. We didn't have any notifications set up for the security certificate, and so it expired. And good friend Ian Landsman tweeted at me that the security certificate was expired for Client Flow, so we fixed that pretty quick. But little things like that happen. You think, oh my God, it's going to fall off a cliff and die.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, because that's not how churn works. We had, like, Pulse went down several years ago for like 36 hours. And Garrett, we didn't lose this. I mean, we may have lost one customer, but, like, statistically speaking, we didn't lose any customers.
Yeah.
There was no blip in almost a day and a half of just being down.
Hmm. Well, they
Um,
can't cancel when it's offline, right?
no, absolutely not. Yeah. But we did get some support emails, a bunch of panicky people, but they really appreciated that we responded right away. And we said, so, something stinky has hit the fan and we're trying to figure it out. Do you want to know what it was?
Hmm.
It's so sad. The data center unplugged the wrong server.
Oh man.
This was like right after we took over Pulse. It was like within weeks or a couple of months. And
How do you
and so
even
the
troubleshoot that? It's offline. It just disappears.
The, exactly. You start calling the data center, and then you get the previous owners on the phone, and you're like, what was the number on that server at the data center? And, like, all of a sudden it's not a number that anybody recognizes, and some guy, like, shows up to work at 8 a.m. the next day, and they're like mentioning it to him, and he says, "Oh, I think I know what happened."
Man.
With 30 seconds, the server had booted up and the app was, like, just running. It's like,
Wow.
seriously. So,
Well.
you worry about stuff like that when taking over an app from somebody, because there are always those hijinks, right?
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, man, churn and customers, they sign up for a product because they get the value out of it, and they run their business on it, and they don't have a lot of incentive or desire to stop paying you. They
Hmm.
have desire to pay you because they use your product.
Yeah.
And that was a really extreme example, and it was like the first app I ever took over, and it was a memorable experience. But nothing that bad has happened since then, because we kind of got better at what we're doing. um and yeah, I mean, but that fear nags at you, even though you know it's irrational.
Yeah.
But you trust in the formula, you trust in the math and the churn metrics and things like that.
So it's one of those things you don't want to trivialize it. And we are kind of laughing, but at the same time, it's you realize in hindsight, you laugh because it's like, oh, you know, we're stressing out, sweating bullets that day, and now in hindsight, oh, somebody unplugged the server. But when you look at the big picture, it's kind of like you said, they signed up for an app, they want the value, and as long as they know you care and you're working hard, if you aren't constantly having problems and proving that you're incapable of handling it, then people are going to generally give you the benefit of the doubt to give you the opportunity to do the right thing. A few people might not, but even so, even if a handful of people leave, the business is going to stay healthy and keep on chugging. You have to really prove that you're incompetent to make people want to leave a product that they believe in.
I'd say that 90% of the angry customer support emails we get across all 6 or 7 of the apps are from people who think we're some big faceless corporation.
Yeah.
And we're not. It's, you know, there are like 30 people here, small business America, economic engine that powers this country and all that, you know, paying taxes and showing up to work and going home and being with our friends and family. And one of the things that I do so we have different apps with different payments and everything, right? So for the apps that have credit card required up front, and we will charge you after your free trial is up. One of the things that happens is that people get a credit card statement with your phone number on it for customer support.
Yep.
And they're going down there, American Express or whatever, and they see this phone number, and they're like, what is pulseapp.com? I don't remember signing up for that. And they'll call you, and they'll be like angry because they think you're some mega software corp or something, you know. And the phone number I put on those apps is my personal cell phone.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how I answer my cell phone, because when I was starting out in my career, when I was younger, I would answer the cell phone like a consultant. This is JD. How can I help you? Right? And now that I've sort of got a little bit more comfortable in my own skin and I know who I am and I don't care, right? I'll answer the phone because I'm from Tennessee. Hello? Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Well, you must be, I bet you're a small business owner. Are you a small business owner? Yeah, all right, so this is my cell phone. My name's JD. I'm the owner of Pulse. Yeah, you got the right number. No, I gave my cell phone because, well, yeah, yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Well, okay, so I put my cell phone down there, not an 800 number, because I want somebody who's concerned about credit card statements to get the boss. And I'm the boss. I'm the owner. And I just wanted to let you know that, yes, ma'am, it's pulseapp.com. It's cash flow management software. You or maybe somebody at your company, you got any employees? Yeah, 3 employees. I bet one of your employees signed up with your company card, didn't they? Oh, you do remember. Okay, yeah, that cash flow thing. Yes, ma'am. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Caitlin to give you a refund on that because y'all didn't use it. Yeah, I checked and I looked, and sure enough, you hadn't logged in. So we're going to get you a refund, and we're going to downgrade you to a free account so this doesn't happen again. But I'd love for you to give it another try. Yes, ma'am. All right. I look forward to it. Email support if you ever have any questions. All right. And that's just how I handle it, right?
Yep.
And what's great is they go from like angry to like, oh, you're a small business person just like me, and they go from angry to like on your side. And I've had them insist that I didn't have to refund them.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to give me the refund. No, we should have canceled. It's not a big deal. Like, they answer the phone. They're like, excuse me, I'm trying to reach pulseapp.c because it gets truncated on the credit card. And they actually say, I thought this was some big megacorp. No, you're a small business person just like me. And they Google you while you're on the phone with them, and they're like, oh, you seem like a nice guy. You're from Tennessee. I'm in Nashville. The next thing you know, you're chatting it up with them. But I think it's being real is the way to go, man.
That is one of those things that I think so many people are afraid of being small against a big corporation. They're afraid of how people will perceive it, that they're, fly by night or something like that. And that's never the case. Like, people are always like, oh, wow, they feel like they can relate, and all of a sudden it becomes real.
Yeah.
All Right on. Okay. So we're kind of getting to the tail end here, but there's a couple things I still want to touch on. One is you've seen all these apps. What are some of the good and bad things that you've learned about apps where people underinvest or overinvest, and that, going through due diligence or whatever, you
Hmm.
see and you're like, oh wow, it would really be, would really be more impressive if they had done more with this or that.
So this is not something that developers want to hear, but you need to keep your books clean.
Yeah.
Like it's so simple to do it the right way. It's way simpler to do it the right way than it is the wrong way. And that's a lesson you'll learn. Get a bookkeeper. Like I'm not talking about like bench.com. If you want to do that, that's fine. But like get you some guy, some lady, some whoever who's a CPA down the street from where you live that you can go talk to 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah.
They're going to do a couple things for you. Number one, they're just going to make sure that your books are clean. Number two, they're going to be looking at your business and your numbers, and they're going to be able to like talk you down off the ledge because they work with business owners and freelancers and small business people day in and day out. And it's not, you don't really need somebody who gets SaaS to be your bookkeeper or your accountant. What you need is somebody who gets accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Let them be your accountant,
Yeah.
right? So that's one thing that just makes a big difference. And I can look at so when I kick the tires on a product to evaluate, um, I've looked at 30, 40, 50 page prospectuses, and I've looked at just a bare metrics login,
Mm-hmm.
right? And everything in between, right? There are like 2 or 3 screens in bare metrics that I care about. And I want to get verification that you're not lying about your income and expenses.
Yeah.
So, bank statements end up being part of my due diligence, but that's at the tail end. What I want to see are clean books with, like, if you can send me a P&L for the last 3 years, I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
That the business side, I get it. And then I like to see the growth in revenue over time. And that's a screenshot I can get from Barometrics, right? Or you can just put me in Barometrics, it's fine. And I like to see a couple other things like churn or whatever. And then like I want to know about the founder as an individual. I want to know if they've got a good reputation in the business, if they blog, if they put themselves out there, if they've got a good reputation. I want to know who they know so that I can do some references. Um, and then I want to know what the tech stack is. And the references help me understand whether or not the site was going to be built well or not,
Yeah.
because is this the kind of person who builds crappy software, or is this the kind of person who like puts care and attention into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and so it's really all about those are the big things I look at. Then when it comes time for due diligence, I'm going to ask some really basic questions. So does the app crash randomly? Like, do you need to reboot the server every 3 days to keep it up? Right? Are there memory leaks? And that's less and less of a problem these days. But man, some of these older Rails apps, like especially on 2, had some memory leak problems, and like just like you just had to reboot the app to get it to come back up. Stuff
Yeah.
like that, right? You got any major problems like that? And then I like to look at support tickets. I want to see how support was handled, what kind of questions come in, and
Mm-hmm.
I spot check the last 6 or 9 months
Mm-hmm.
of support tickets.
Yep.
So you want to be good at support. You want to have a fairly modern tech stack, but you don't necessarily need to be on the latest and greatest of anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd rather have a snappy MVC Rails app with good caching than a single page app on React.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's not that there's anything wrong with React. It's just a simpler product to operate, and single page apps are great, but like there's nothing wrong with a little page refresh if it's snappy.
Yep. Yep.
And then one thing that really matters to me a great deal is I'm not going to buy anything that's fugly. And it's not just about being a designer myself or a snob in any way, but I really care about the user experience of a product. That says a lot as to what its traction is going to be. And also, frankly, says a lot about what the code's going to be like too.
Yeah.
Because if it looks like the design was outsourced to India, guess what? It probably was, along with the code.
Yeah.
And there's not necessarily like inherently a problem with that. It's just that I prefer to take over things that have had um, a smaller set of eyes on them, someone who had to live with the code they wrote,
Hmm.
and something that was probably going to be easier to maintain with less eyeballs on it. It's going to be easier to take over.
Yeah.
Um,
You write code a
and
lot differently when you're the one answering the emails about it and
mm,
implementing the bug fixes.
yes, yes, absolutely. And so those are the big things I look at as far as um, people investing in some areas, over investing and staying current with the latest technology. That tells me you're an engineer. you know, which is great. It's going to tell me that you're an engineer. But I like buying products from people who understand the whole business, and it's going to be in healthier shape if that's the case.
Yeah.
Um, there's nothing wrong with the newest technology, and there's nothing wrong with the older technologies either. It's really just about what kind of shape it's in and how well maintained it is. That's important.
Hmm.
Um, but I see a lot of products where a developer will spend too much energy trying to get traction in marketing, or whatever, and so they'll waste a bunch of money spending on marketing or advertising, and it's not working.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't know when to cut it off, and so uh, you'll see like they'll try something for 3 months and they'll say, wasted a bunch of money. And then 6 months later, they'll go try it again and they'll waste 4 or 5 grand on AdWords. And they're just trying to teach themselves marketing.
I
And I
thought we were
think,
done talking about Sifter.
uh, oh no, yeah, no, that's actually Sifter and pretty much every other app I've bought. Um, there's a difference though, in the type of seller, Garrett. There's the seller who doesn't have capital behind their product, and there's the seller who does. And more often, the seller who has capital behind their product was less efficient with their marketing dollars because it wasn't their money,
Hmm.
and it didn't hurt them to spend 10 grand because they're like, well, I got 18 months to figure it out if I spend 10 grand a month,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you spend 10 grand on marketing, you know, that's 10 grand that you don't get to take home at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? And, so you're a lot more efficient with it and you're willing to turn it off quicker.
Yeah. That's true.
And that's the problem. So I see a lot of energy get expended on that. And that group doesn't really drive up the value of the business
Hmm.
at all if it's not working.
Yeah.
Um,
If anything, it drives it down because you're losing some of that discretionary.
well, I got ways to spend that when I'm negotiating on price. Because I know that I'm going to be able to bring it in and make it run more efficiently because of
Yeah.
the infrastructure I've got with the staff and all, and the ability at some point to capitalize on cross promotions between the apps, and the audience that I have across 6 apps is,
I keep waiting for you to do something with that, but
I'm working on something.
all right.
You know what it is. We can't talk about it. We can't talk about it on the show. It's
We'll
not
see.
done
We'll
yet.
see. I'm waiting.
Yeah, so I've got some plans for cross promotion and setting up a little we're working on that. That'll be probably middle to the end of 2017 before it starts to really
Yeah.
start to really put that out there and give it the old college try.
Good deal. Well, we're kind of getting long here. Do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice for budding entrepreneurs creating SaaS apps?
Um, I guess it is a lot harder to start a SaaS app and get it to a place where it can sustain itself But once you get there, it's worth it. So um, don't give up too quickly. Don't give up over 1, 2, or even 3 years. These things take years to develop. And when they get to that point, they truly are worth something. There are people who will buy them from you. And, even something that's just making enough to maybe make a living for you, when you get ready to sell it, even a modest little app is enough to pay off your house and get you completely out of debt.
Yeah.
And so if we're talking about, someone who's in their 20s or 30s, busting their butt and getting impatient and giving up after 2 or 3 years, don't do that. Go 4, 5, 6 years, and then you got something. And you really got something. You just got to kind of get one customer at a time, earn their trust, build a good product, make friends with your customers, get your voice out there, talk about what you're doing, share it, and eventually you'll go from 1 to 5 to 10 to 20 to 25 to 30 to 35 to 45 to 55. If you keep doing that, you're eventually going to get to 200, 300, 400 customers, and you've got a business that's worth more than your house. And you can sell it if you want to, or you can work 10 hours a week if you want to,
Yeah.
you know,
Gives you a
or,
lot of options.
yeah, or you can, do it again and then, run both of them,
Yeah.
but it does take time. Building a SaaS app up does take time. Nothing is an overnight success. I'm probably about 3 years away from my overnight success at this point. I've been doing it for 7 years.
Yeah.
I would give that advice. And then I'll end with this. Uh, Decide for yourself what success is. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to take outside investment. Don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't take outside investment. They're completely different animals, whether you want to bootstrap or get venture capital
Yeah.
or do a startup incubation seed hatchery germination project like they have at every downtown incubator type thing. Like, decide for yourself. Look at the pros and cons of each and just use your own critical thinking skills to come up with what works for you. Just be
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. That is absolutely. That is so, so true. So true. All right. Well, this is great. I appreciate it, of course, as always. And thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you, Garrett. Before we say goodbye to everybody,
Yeah. Uh-oh.
um, we didn't talk about. See, I'm from Tennessee,
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Memphis, Tennessee specifically, and you're from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a soft place in my heart for Texas. I was born there, but I live in Tennessee now, and not just Tennessee, but Memphis, Tennessee. And we're gonna have to. I need you to have the barbecue conversation with me. So, so is barbecue beef or pork?
I know my answer, but not being a huge barbecue connoisseur, I'm not sure it's going to mesh. For me, it's beef.
Hmm. Brisket,
It's brisket.
Texas brisket,
Brisket served on wax paper.
brisket served on wax paper. I love a good brisket, and real barbecue is pork.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go ahead and put that out there,
Mm-hmm.
just so that everybody understands the right answer.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's the dry rub Memphis style barbecue sauce. And this is important stuff, so I have to share it. Okay, and then we'll be done. But barbecue sauce is for people who don't know how to cook meat.
Mm-hmm.
Dry rub is the way to go. Close second is a good Texas brisket.
All right. I'll take that. So I haven't been to Memphis yet, so I don't have the frame of reference.
Well, come on, I'll cook ribs for you in my backyard. The invitation is open, and if anybody listening um, wants my recipe for dry rub ribs, the Memphis way, the right way, hit me up on Twitter and just say, "Hey, what's your recipe for ribs?" I'll get it to you.
But just like they shouldn't take advice about whether to bootstrap or get funding, they probably shouldn't. They should choose their own barbecue.
That's not true. That's actually that's that's not how barbecue works.
uh,
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
yeah, of course, man. Thanks for being on.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah.